Hello, I would like to welcome you to the SPACE4Cities Webinar number 4, which is one of a series of 4, actually the last one in our series of webinars of the SPACE4Cities project. My name is Alex Kluhak. I'm your host for this afternoon. I work for Open Smart Cities, which is a network of cities which are collaborating in establishing interoperable local data ecosystems. And yeah, we are part of the SPACE4Cities project, as we say. The objective of the webinar is really to, on one side, open up an understanding of opportunities around, what are European space technologies and the nature of the services they offer. More importantly, what sort of value can they provide to cities, local authorities and regions, and also at the same time, how can overall we better understand the market and the opportunities that the technologies represent. May I please ask everyone who's sort of joining in? I think maybe Ari, you could sort of help as well. Perfect. So yeah, obviously SPACE4Cities is a European project that has started at the beginning of this year. It's funded by the European Space Agency, and it really looks at encouraging the development of new innovative applications based around European space technologies, specifically Galileo and Copernicus, and to deliver new solutions that make our cities and also regions more resilient and more sustainable. And specifically, we focus on challenges such as dynamic management of public areas, green spaces, transport infrastructure, and city maintenance. Just to give you a bit of a background as well here, we've got roughly 3 million now of European budget available for next year, where our project partners, which are like some of the front runner regions such as Helsinki or cities, Helsinki, Amsterdam, Ghent, Chiemmares or Athens city regions are looking to procure. And obviously, there will be a multi-stage process overall where we've actually just recently launched an open market consultation. And then over a period of the remaining project, we will procure different innovative solutions to challenges that we face in those cities. Basically starting off with some early prototyping activities and solution development over to a real solution delivery at the end. Obviously, we had a series of webinars already discussing different challenge areas. The last one was focused around mobility and transport, the one before around climate change and resilience, and this challenge is around urban green space management. And I'm very pleased to have 3 very exciting and interesting talks that sort of hopefully will help our understanding on actually what's possible with satellite technologies in this space. I would like to introduce you to our 3 speakers. So we've got Marion, Jérôme, and Roman. Say hi. We're looking forward to some exciting presentations now. To kind of better understand, so we'll have these 3 talks, and obviously I'm sure you will have questions, and we will really take your questions after their presentations in a panel conversation. And again, if you want, you could basically also post some of your messages, your questions directly into the message window as well, and we'll pick them up as well in the panel conversation. Okay, so obviously some housekeeping rules. So please keep your mics off, and also please don't turn on your camera when the speakers are presenting. Okay, so yeah, as I said, I hope you'll enjoy the session. And I'd like now to hand over to our first presenter, which is Marion. Marion, over to you.
Thanks a lot, and hi everybody. Good to see you. So my name is Marion. I am a product manager at Kayrros, and I will share my screen right now to tell you what is Kayrros and what we are doing on the specific topic of today's matter. So my presentation is going to be focused on adverse risk management of urban green spaces. Just to so that you're a little bit familiar with Kayrros, we are a French company that was started 8 years ago. We combine satellite data and other sources with AI to produce the data that people need to take decisions on climate in general. So we are currently selling our data to a wide range of customers, including public sector, in particular the French public sector, from central and local governments, as well as firefighters. I will share later on several infrastructure, public organizations, and also with other products to the United Nations or Energy Department of the US. So that's for the public, but we're also selling our data to commodity and energy traders, insurers, and investors in general. Our three missions are focused on one, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So we focus a lot of effort on quantifying, detecting, and attributing greenhouse gas emissions to specific sources so that polluters can be held accountable. Then protecting people, ecosystem, and assets. That's the team I'm actually leading within Kayrros, and that's where most of the things that I'm covering today come from. So the idea is to support all the conservation and restoration efforts, as well as risk anticipation. And then managing the energy transition, which is really providing the data and the transparency needed to assess where we stand in this transition and to help decision makers accelerate it. So if we think about green spaces, in particular in an urban environment, it is very ambivalent because it's totally an asset and something we want to preserve and often maximize because it has lots of value. But very often when you are preserving that asset, and increasingly with climate change, it provokes and creates some risks for local population and for activities, which means if you want to actively preserve nature, and green spaces, you also need to have a full strategy to better assess and mitigate risks. So a few points to detail on this. Why is it so crucial to preserve and maximize green spaces? I think it's kind of obvious for everybody, but the way you preserve and take risk into account depends on how complete your understanding of those assets is. So biodiversity protection is one thing because as you all know, biodiversity is the second crisis we're facing with climate change, with a massive extension. Carbon sequestration maximization. We know vegetation is sequestering carbon. It's important to make sure that we are keeping the biggest amount of carbon as possible within green spaces, which, for example, comes with having the good share of species. Then compensation of urban heat islands is especially important for cities. We know with climate change, again, we are increasingly facing very high temperature peaks. So vegetation can help here. And then rainwater management and, of course, recreational activities. So for all these reasons, we want to protect green spaces, but a lot of risk can come from there. There's two that I want to cover today. Tree fall, because of the age of the trees or because of high winds, for example, is a danger not only for local population, but also for infrastructures, for example, power lines or railway lines, and can really stop activity for a while. And also wildfire, again, it's a risk that is increasing a lot and becoming harder to anticipate due to climate change. And the more vegetation you have close to buildings and economic activities and housing, the higher the risk of a fire starting and then propagating to the entire green spaces, but also the higher the risk for the activities and humans being there to be impacted. So in that context, why is remote sensing important? I want to highlight the fact before I go into the details that remote sensing is not the solution in itself. It's really part of a full solution. In ideal solution where we've been working closely with different partners, the best solutions were when remote sensing was combined with ground data, and eventually in some contexts we also had additional data, for example, drones or tree captures or other kinds of sensors being deployed. But why is remote sensing particularly useful? It is important because you have a solution that is immediately at scale and immediately timely, because there's lots of data available right now in terms of the raw imagery. And our entire work and expertise at Kayrros is in producing the data based, like the analysis based on that raw imagery. But there's lots of image. The Copernicus constellation from Europe produces optical images every 5 days in average. So it's something that really tells you a lot on the evolution. And that covers the entire world. So we can cover very large areas in a scalable and cost-effective way. So usually our customers use that to assess the situation when they start working on how best they can manage their green spaces. So there's kind of a situation report. Where are our current green spaces? What's the mix of species? Where is the biomass, the carbon sequestration potential maximized, so that you can better frame your policies. Then there's a second layer that our customers use a lot, which is alerting. So understanding on a short-term period where are the biggest risks associated with vegetation, so that you can anticipate, take mitigation actions and reduce that risks. And also public policy evaluation. So it's in the long term when you have put a policy in place and you want to check that it has real effects. So that's really important because very often on climate and nature, we take actions, but we are lacking the verification of the impact. And satellite data is very helpful there because you have constant monitoring. You can go back in the past to check historical data and see where you were before, and then having a step-by-step assessment, and you can refine policies, understanding what has been working and what has not. And so you can have a way more effective policy in place. I want to share with you two case studies that illustrates what I've been saying. The first one is a project we've done over the last year with several departments in France. So don't know if that's very familiar for everybody, but it's the local territorial status or level under the regional. So at this administrative level, you have quite a granular view. It's really specific, but still it's a large part of the country. And we've been working closely with both cities and local governments and firefighters brigades who wanted to better anticipate wildfire risks. Why? Because again, this risk is becoming harder to predict based only on historical data, because fire tend to occur in regions that were not impacted before, and they tend to be bigger and more impactful than in the past. So what we've developed is a risk map based on vegetation. There's several features there. I won't go into too much of the details, but first we produce a map of risk for the short term, so before the fire season, to tell them these are the regions that are most exposed this year to fires due to humidity levels in the soil, due to vegetation cover, due to proximity to infrastructure. So there's something like 15 different metrics included in that model, and it's a deep learning model predicting the risk. And then we do a second thing, which is measuring vegetation around each building in regions where the interface between forest and cities is important, and in regions that are at high risk, so that wildfire can use that to define what they call a defendability metric. So basically, they will say, okay, this building is surrounded by a lot of vegetation. There's a continuum with the forest. We think it's going to be harder to defend than another one where vegetation has been better managed and the risk is lower than that from a fire starting. A very big and uncontrollable, unmanageable fire starts. So that's really important. It's not the only use case where this technology is deployed, but it's really important because you see there's direct link with action. Local authorities can take action ahead of the fire, going to the property owners, going to the mayors, depending on what who are the stakeholders, to try organizing mitigation measures. So selective cuts to make sure that the buildings are less close to the forest, and also when a fire starts, firefighters can directly use that to deploy their teams in the most efficient way. A second use case I want to share with you is focused on infrastructure management. So here the picture is showing a few people from my team who went to the field with a company managing power lines. We had been working for them for a few months, measuring vegetation around their lines, electric lines, to help them anticipate where there was a high risk of tree fall impacting the lines and then provoking large disruptions on the network. We've done similar work for different kinds of infrastructures. So the same is true for railway tracks, for example, and other kinds of infrastructure, in particular linear ones that are very impacted. If you get one punctual problem, then it impacts the entire network. So in that case, we've been producing maps of canopy height and canopy cover. So we measure the vegetation height and cover and the proximity to the infrastructures, and we generate alerts when we detect something wrong. And in that case, they look so happy because they went to the field and confirmed that very specific things that we had been mentioning and detecting using satellite data was indeed true, and there was a real problem on the line that the company had not been able to spot with their traditional methodologies. So maybe I'll stop here. The idea is that there's a lot that can be done on green space management. I'm sure my colleagues will talk also on positive things that vegetation bring and that can be measured with satellite. But again, I wanted to insist on lots of risks that come with maximizing those green spaces. And in that context, it really makes sense deploying satellite approaches so that those risks are addressed in an effective manner, focusing on hotspots and priority areas without having too big an impact on the budget of local authorities. So thank you for your time and attention, and I'll be happy to answer questions later or within the chat.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks so much, Marion, for the engaging presentation. Yeah, I think I would like now to invite Jerome, our second speaker, to take the floor and obviously share his presentation with us. Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Jerome.
Yes, Good afternoon, everyone. I will start sharing my screen. I would like to thank Alex for giving us the opportunity to present our activities. I hope you see my screen right now.
Yes, all good.
Okay, thank you. And so my name is Jean Weber. I am a research and development engineer at LTU, specialized in remote sensing and Earth observation. And my talk today will be about managing urban green spaces, and especially how Earth observation and imagery can provide information about ground species, vegetation, and dynamics in cities. So first, about LTU. LTU is a startup founded in 2018. We are today about 20 employees located in Paris and Toulouse in France. And our expertise is computer vision and artificial intelligence. We have developed technologies for image analysis, which are patented, and they are used in various applications: industrial control, environment monitoring, security, and defense. And our mission is to provide our customer and partners with useful information extracted from image analysis to help them make a decision. Our main customer and partners are police forces in different European countries, Interpol, the French Ministry of Defense, industrial groups, and of course cities. So at LTU, we have two core technologies. The first one is change detection. So it is used to detect changes between two or several images to extract information and provide our customer with this information to help them make the decision. And the second one is visual search. It's a technology to find similar images that are stored in database. From these two technologies, we have several products and services. The first one is called Excelio. It is dedicated to industrial control and inspection. Just to provide you with an illustration, so the aim here is to control that, for instance, in this electrical cabinet, all the switches are correctly set. So we have a reference image, and the operator take a picture during an inspection with his cell phone, and he can make the check against the reference image, and the output is the difference between the two. So it helps the operator to identify the differences and to take decisions and to take actions if necessary. The second one I would like to present you is Image ID. The technology uses an algorithm providing a unique signature for images, and this technology is used to find similar images. The first one highlighted here in this slide is to check that works of art have been reported stolen or are not reported stolen. For instance, we have a picture of a vase, and we want to check that it is stolen, if it is stolen or not. And with our algorithm, we can check reference database and provide an answer if it has been stolen or not. So it is used by many police forces at European level to fight against trafficking of art. And this same technology is used, for instance, for remote sensing analysis. On this figure, We have a reference database of planes extracted from satellite images, and we bring a new image of a plane, and we want to check if this plane exists in our database, and if yes, what is the plane that is tested. And in this case, you can see the results. So we have here it's Airbus 380, and we make the link between all the A380s that we have in our database. So this algorithm is used to find similar images, and it's very efficient since it takes less than 0.3 seconds to check against millions of objects. And so related to our topic today, the change detection algorithm has been ported to process images from Earth observation. The program we have developed is called Earth Change. And you have on this slide two images from the output provided by the algorithm. For instance, here you have two satellite images acquired over a lake in southwest of France during summer 2022. We have the reference image in spring, the image to test at the end of the summer. We perform the difference between the two, and we can assess the water loss, the surface of the water loss during the summer. Here we have two satellite images acquired above a Turkish city before and after the earthquake of 2023. Happened in February 2023, and we have the first image before the earthquake, the image after the earthquake, and we have here in pink the differences. So we can provide information on the location of the images during the earthquake. And concerning green cities, inside the Earth Change program, we are developing the Villa Verde initiative. It is a service to provide cities with added value information and indicators for urban environment management. We can compute vegetation surface in the urban areas. We can analyze ground temperature, especially with regard with the urban heat island effect. Sorry, we can also, as we saw just before, we've seen just before, assess water surfaces for lakes, and so we can also use open data, for instance, to provide information about river flow. And more specifically about green spaces management, Villa Verde answers several questions. For instance, we are about to compute the proportion of vegetation in a city. So it can be used to answer this question and to analyze if there are any temporal trends at city scale because of new construction, new buildings, houses, and so on. So it is used to provide information on the current status of the vegetation in urban environment, as well as the potential, the trends coming from historical images. Besides, we can also answer the question about vegetation health and how vegetation responds to weather conditions, if there are any trends. And this can answer a question about replanting, for instance, if there are trees that are sick. And the last question Villa Verde answers is about well-being, and we provide for this question maps to show the distribution of the green spaces in a city and the walking distance to them. So it is an indicator to provide information about well-being of citizens. So for this, for Villa Verde, sorry, for this program, we use satellite images because they can take picture and images any location on Earth. It's very flexible. They acquire images at regular frequency, so we have constant revisit time, and so we can acquire a series of images that they can analyze further, and they capture small details. For instance, on the right part of the slide, you have two images. The first one acquired by Pleiades Neo, satellite from Airbus Defence and Space Company, with a spatial resolution at 30 centimeters. And below, you have a Sentinel-2 image operated by European Space Agency, provided images at 10 meters spatial resolution. So we can use various satellites depending on the spatial resolution we need. So it's very flexible. We can access free images at the images provided by the Sentinel satellites provided by the European Union. We can also purchase commercial images when we need more resolution or specific acquisition above dedicated areas. And the other point is that satellite provides information to characterize surfaces, especially they work in various spectral bands. We know the visible bands, blue, green, red. We can also use the infrared bands, and this infrared band is very useful because with this band we can discriminate. We can make the difference between vegetation and other type of surfaces, especially rocks, concrete, and so on. For this, we use the red band and the near-infrared band. We compute the contrast between the two, and as you see on this figure, the contrast is very high for vegetation, while it is very low for rocks. So we use what we call vegetation indices, specifically normalized different vegetation index, which provide information on the presence of vegetation and if the vegetation is sparse or if it is dense. So the main computation are based on this kind of indices. And I would like to show you different use cases that we perform over two different cities. The first one is Nanterre in France, is close to Paris, just northwest to Paris, a few kilometers. And the second one is Toulouse in the southwest of France. So the first use case is about monitoring vegetation at city scale. This is a view of the city of Nanterre in true color, RGB. And as I showed just before, we'll use the red band and the near-infrared band. And we can see on these two images the differences between the two bands, especially in this area where there is a green space. We can see the difference also on this island. Oops, sorry. And we compute the vegetation index for each pixel, and the result is the surface of vegetation that can be computed. For each pixel, we know its class, if it's a pixel representing vegetation, or if it's a pixel representing a not vegetated surface. So here in this figure, you have vegetation in green, not vegetation in yellow. And if we compute the surface of the green pixels divided by the surface of the city, then we get the proportion of vegetation in that city. So it provides an information on the amount of vegetation in a given city. Thanks to the regular acquisition of images, we can analyze various images, and we can have historical data and historical results. So for each acquisition date, we can compute the surface of vegetation, and we can fit these results, and we can analyze if there are any trends along time. So it is used to see if the area of vegetation is stable in a city, or if there is a decrease because of new buildings, for instance, new artificial surfaces which replace natural surfaces. So it is used to provide cities with indicator and information about the dynamics of the vegetated areas.
Jerome, one more minute,
Yes.
please. One more minute.
Yes.
Yeah, I said you have 1 more minute available. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So this can be performed to provide vegetation surface. We can do this on several years, along within a year. Sorry, so by month, so we can provide indicators like this one. We can use also the vegetation index to analyze the vegetation figure. For instance, here, still above Nanterre, we have 4 images acquired at 4 different years, the same months, and we can see the difference. For instance, in 2021, there were dense vegetation, while before, and especially in 2020, there were less vegetation, 50% less than in 2021. So this is an indicator provided information on vegetation health if there is a stress regarding drought or high temperature, for instance. And finally, the last use case I would like to show you is about well-being, and this use case answers the question about how long it takes to walk to the nearest green spaces and where to create new green spaces. For this, we used open data called OpenStreetMap that you may know, and it provides information on the location of the green spaces, and from this information and from the knowledge of all the streets, we can compute the distance for a pedestrian to reach the closest green space. So it is an information to see if the green spaces are evenly distributed in a city, or if there are areas where there is a lack of green spaces. It is the case, for instance, here in the southeast of the center of Toulouse, for instance. So it provides information to urban planners to see where it could be beneficial to create new green spaces.
Thank you, Jerome.
Yes, and this was my last slide. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, we'll be pleased to answer them during the Q&A session.
No, thanks so much, Jerome. Yeah, very interesting use cases. Hopefully we'll discuss them in a minute. Okay, so now I would like to hand over to our final speaker, Roman. Again, feel free to share your slides, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, first of all, I would like to thank Alex for the introduction, and thanks the 2 co-speakers, Jerome and Marion as well. So I'm going to just share my screen and my first presentation. So can you all see the presentation? Okay, I guess it's
yes,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. So basically, I'm Roman Jasinski, and I'm the Chief Scientific Officer and Project Director of the Climate Company. I'm going to try to describe you the Climate Company's contribution to urban green space management, but also creation, because it's also important to create new urban green spaces in order to regulate the temperature and everything. So in 3 parts. The first part is what is the climate company. Then second part, what do we develop and how is it related to space technologies and applications, but also to green spaces management. And then some use cases to show you how we manage to respond to different challenges that can face cities. So the Climate Company is a company created in 2019 by 2 co-founders that are specialists in climate dynamics, obviously, and also in development and marketing of space applications. So we were awarded several times, especially in COP21 for our innovation and research. So we are a research and development company. Basically, we work in research and development in anticipation and adaptation to climate change. So we are way smaller than my two colleagues. So I managed to have all or a big part of our team on the screen. So we have 3 main competencies. We are based in Toulouse, also in southwest of France, and we have 3 main competencies, which are climate dynamics and its comprehension, obviously development and marketing of space applications, and data science to treat, recuperate, and valorize data, climatic data, but also extra climatic data. So we are this small team in Toulouse, and we developed several solutions and products in order to assess the problematic of climate change and its adaptation. So basically, we have a first index which allows to evaluate the exposure to physical climate risks anywhere in the world and very fastly for a large volume of site of addresses. Then we are able to assess the resilience of a building. We are also able to simulate and with urban climate model to simulate the impact of given solutions on climate data, such as temperature, humidity, floods, and anything. So especially the main solution that we are talking here in this topic is vegetation and urban green space, how this affects and impacts the climate at a local scale. And then a last solution, which is urban botanics, which allows us to identify in the city which are the best areas to implant trees and to implant vegetation in order to regulate the risks of the thermal risks, so of urban heat island, but also the risk of floods with the absorption of water in excess. So basically, as you can guess, we have several target markets. So basically, financial sectors with asset managers who want to know how to treat their portfolios of assets, development and construction, obviously, companies and major groups, but also public authorities who need to know the exposure of their territory to climate risk and who need to know where to create new urban green spaces, but also how to adapt their existing urban green spaces. So obviously, this is really driven by the current regulations that are being invested in Europe and in each country. So every city, every company has to adapt to climate change and has to work mainly with the most efficient solution to adapt in cities, and this is trees and urban green spaces. So I'm gonna just switch from my presentation to my browser in order to show you our application, the system and the platform that we developed. So I think that now you see my browser and my platform. So we developed a platform called My Climate, which allows any user and any client of the Climate Company to access to its own personal kind of access on platform and see the exposure of climate risk to all the project sites or anything that he wants to assess. So for example, here we have like neutral emblematic spots like Eiffel Tower, Buckingham Palace in London, Duomo di Milano in Milan. And obviously we can compute it anywhere in the world. So it's totally worldwide, very fast, and we can do it for any number of points in the world. And it's already based on satellite data. And if I go, for example, on one point, so Duomo di Milano in Milan. You can see that I can zoom in and see, recognize my site, my building. And then we have the exposure to climate risks of this site, which is based on obviously climatic data related to hydrological situation, thermal situation, and wind situation, but also for a fourth subindex, which is called urban situation, and which is based already on the consideration in the assessment of exposure to climate risk of the urban green spaces around the site that we are assessing. So basically here around the site of Duomo di Milano, we can assess the percentage of impervious surface, of vegetation surface, low vegetation and high vegetation, but also built surface in order to take into consideration the effect of heat absorption and storage, and then being able to quantify the risk of urban heat island. We also compute the urban density index, which is which takes into account the building height and the distance between each building in order to know if there is if the place that we assess has a really high intensity of urban heat island or not. Sorry, what?
Can you please be muted? That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. So basically, obviously here you can see that in Duomo di Milano, you have a lot of impervious surface, so a lot of risks of urban heat island. So basically, if I go on risks and I go on urban heat island, you can see that this site is obviously very at risk to urban heat islands. But if I go, for example, in Tromsø, Norway, you'll see that obviously with all the urban green spaces that we see, the risk of urban heat island is not really an issue, and the urban situation here given by our subindex is really low, with a really good management of urban green spaces and really low risk of urban heat island. So basically, this is really well adapted to people who want to know for their portfolio what is the exposure to each asset, what is the exposure to climate risk for each of their assets, and then we kind of adapted this evaluation to countries, cities, and public authorities. So basically, we have a platform called Cities and Climate, which is a French demonstration. So it takes the administrative territorial division that Marion talked about earlier, and we are able to assess the exposure to climate risk not on points, so punctual sites, but on each sections of the city, which can be this type of sections, or really lower, like really more precise sections that can be really close, and we can assess the risks of urban heat island. We can assess the risk of marine submersion for each of these assets, so for each of these sections. So the city can know very well and with a great precision the exposure of its territory to climate risks, and then adapt the localization and adapt the existing urban green space in order to mitigate the risks of the thermal risk of urban heat island, but also of flood, which can be marine submersion, but also floods by river floods or anything that are linked to an excess of water. And so basically what I wanted to show you next is that we have then products which, similarly to what Jerome showed you, allows to identify like the places to create new urban green spaces. So basically here we are in Toulouse, so our city, and you have like the division of the city, which with each section that is assesses. Here you can see the climate risk exposure, which moves when I move on the map, and you can see that we can go to a very finer scale on the urban heat island with 100 square meters resolution for urban heat island. I can go on satellite view in order to see that this kind of pattern that you see is related to the most densified areas in the city, so the center of Toulouse. And then what you can do is on this platform, on this tool, is to keep only the really high urban heat island areas. So this is the main areas where it's a priority to implant trees, implant green spaces area in order to regulate the temperature. And then you can add on the map every layer which constitutes constraints or limitation to tree implantation. So it's everything related to transport networks, constructions, existing constructions, energy networks as well. And to finally get what we call plantable areas, which are all the areas in Toulouse that are currently not vegetated and that are that can be vegetated and can be plantable because they have no limitations and no constraints to the implantation of trees in those areas. So basically, this allows the city to understand how they can mitigate the risks of thermal stress and urban heat island in their city, just by identifying all the places that they can where they can implant trees. And then obviously we also I'm sorry, this demonstration is in French because it's the demonstration in Toulouse, but you can there select the species of trees that you can plant in your city and see how it behave in function of different criteria, which are the impact that it will have on the regulation of temperature and urban heat island, then the resilience of the tree, of the given tree to climate change, obviously carbon storage, but also pollution storage and interest for biodiversity and etc. So obviously this tool is very useful for cities to understand where to create new urban green spaces. And the last thing I wanted to show you is our urban simulation tool, which allows to understand and to evaluate the impact of given scenarios of vegetation on the climate at a micro local scale. So basically here you have the existing situation in a neighborhood, an area in Martinique, French Antilles. And what you can see is that there is a lot of buildings and areas and vegetated areas that are a bit dispersed on the area. And we propose different scenarios to optimize and to let's say optimize the urban green spaces in order to regulate and to mitigate the risks that they know in their territory, and which is obviously thermal stress, urban heat island, but also the risk of floods linked to cyclones and really high precipitations. So basically, we propose different scenarios with adapting the type of species of trees, the type of urban green spaces, in order to see the impact of each scenario on the local climate scale and on given climatic data, which are, for example, UTCI, which is the Universal Thermal Climate Index, which we can see there allows the first scenario allows to diminish by 10% the time that the people in the area will pass in high stress thermal values, which are related to a percepted temperature. But also we can see that this first scenario goes as far as to mitigate by 38% the runoff, which is the quantity of water that is not absorbed by soils because they are mineralized and not vegetalized and natural soils. So basically, we kind of worked with them in order to work on different scenarios in order to see which one is the most adapted and how to optimize your urban green space in order to mitigate the most the different risks of urban heat island and flood. And you can see that the last scenario that we worked on has can allow to mitigate by 61% the runoff, the risk of floods by runoff, but also mitigate the time that the populations will pass in high stress thermal values.
1 minute, Roman.
I'm done. Thank you very much. I was good. Thank you.
Okay,
And
yeah.
I'll be happy to answer the question as well.
Okay, brilliant. You can say a few more words, no worry.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Brilliant. Okay, so thanks so much. Great presentation again. Can I now ask all the presenters to come live as well onto the chat, and maybe also Ari, so who's sort of helping us as well with some of the questions. So yeah, so yeah, very interesting talks. I think what sort of, I guess, what you always see is like risk somehow, as well as a sort of cross-cutting threat, different types of risk, obviously from different perspectives. But on one side, I like obviously Marion's take on that actually vegetation is an opportunity, but also a risk. Whereas like then on the other side, Roman maybe sharing a bit about that yeah, obviously there is climate risk, and actually vegetation can help mitigate that, and there are obviously different scenarios that one can explore and so on. And yeah, so one of the sort of key points of the conversation really is your tools are great, and they show a lot of let's say opportunities or data where one needs to act, right? So let's say in the case of Marion, you can see vegetation, also boundaries, and where maybe interventions are necessary to reduce risks from those vegetations, right? Be it on your infrastructure, or transport infrastructure, or electric infrastructure, or like just fire risks on houses and stuff. But what's I think more important is then how actionable are then these insights that you have, and what are the sort of typical actions that people then would do to mitigate these risks. So maybe Marion, can you sort of give a start, so give some examples on what are sort of actions then, or how far does also what you do support the like a local authority to take concrete actions?
Yes, sure. So indeed, we are providing the data, but then we are really hoping, crossing fingers, so that people act based on that data. It's the final goal, of course. So what we've seen is a lot of current customers, what they would do is they will cut trees, but the goal is to cut the less trees as possible, because we want to keep nature. So it's really a tool about knowing where to select, to do selective cuts and selective interventions instead of cutting everything as a prevention measure. So that's really important for most of our customers. The no risk approach is no tree. If we don't want this, we really need to understand where are the trees, how fast they're growing, if they're growing the right way, if they are at risk or not, so that you can be selective. Also, I see on the longer term, what a lot of people are doing is using this data for urban planning, and it's close to what Roman was describing. It is you can act on prevention in the short term, because you identify this specific tree that is about to fall or is too close to an infrastructure, or this specific wildfire risk. But it's also in the long term, if we see that wildfire risk is always super present in that specific neighborhood, maybe we want to stop expanding the city in that direction, or maybe we want to manage the forest a little bit differently in that specific area, because otherwise it's going to be like incremental risks each day. And maybe one final thing I can add on during this answer is, unfortunately, there's still a lot of cases where we have the data and there's no action behind it. And one of the reasons for that, and that's why I'm happy that we have so many people today in the call, is that there's still a lot of people outside of the geospatial world that need to be convinced that this is directly useful, or that they can trust the data. It's not useful. The problem is not usability, but it's really the trust, especially when we have not only the images, but something on top of that, the analysis, machine learning, etc. Especially in public institutions, I feel because it feels still brand new, And because there are these big words, AI and machine learning, people feel like maybe they shouldn't trust it. So please trust us. The data is there and it's working. And you need to start testing it to prove that it's really impactful at your level.
Thanks, Marion. Yeah, Jerome, over to you. So again, obviously, you can identify change in sort of like, you know, vegetation, for instance, or in water bodies and stuff like this. But just knowing that this changed, you know, is good. But what's next? And so how do your clients, customers then act upon this data and the insights that you provide?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, with the tools and analysis I presented, we are able to calculate the surface of vegetation compared with the surface of non-vegetation, for instance. And how we can use it is by analyzing the trends, because if you want to build new infrastructure, for instance, then we will over natural soils. Then we would destroy natural soil, vegetation, ecosystem, and so on. So we can use these maps, for instance, where we have a pixel representing vegetation to assess how much vegetation we will lose. And so this is a first insight. And in the actual context where we want to have zero soil artificialization, that means that if we want to build new infrastructure somewhere, then we'll have to create new green spaces elsewhere. So at city level, we can provide maps showing where we have green spaces, what would be the impact if we destroy some green spaces, and how we could act, for instance, by converting old industrial sites to green spaces. This is something we have seen in Toulouse, where we have industrial sites linked with aeronautics and plane construction, and they are currently being renewed, and they build houses and residential areas, but they also create green spaces to have this stability in the vegetation ratio or proportion in the city. Because today there are rules and regulation to limit the vegetation loss in cities. So it is important to have this kind of insights where the vegetation is located and what are the impacts if I destroy some areas, and what could I do to build new green species, and what I should at the end with this map of where the green spaces are located and how much I have to work to reach these green spaces. So this is an interesting insight, because it helps urban planners to plan their new spaces. And yeah, that's it.
Well, no, thank you. Yeah, understood. Roman, obviously, I guess your tool was obviously quite visual. It was nice to see sort of the different layers of insights and what you can do. And I think what I particularly sort of liked as well is like this sort of simulation, the what if, right? So questions that you can sort of ask now for different scenarios, right? But coming back, I mean, a lot of it is still sort of a lot what you do is like you've got some sort of like climate risk index or something like this, if I understand it. I mean, is this really a useful enough measure for managing green spaces, or generally climate risk, or what are, yeah, or are there any other layers or other sort of metrics that are important as well in this?
So, well, I think that it's not the only thing to take. Our indexes cannot be taken alone and do all the work. Like our indices, I think, have to come at first, like as a first diagnosis of the situation of the whole territory, and then we are specialists in climate data, in satellite space applications and data science, but we are not specialists in urban planning or specialist of trees, of gardens or anything. So basically, there is not only the climatic perspective that is important. So I think it's mandatory to have first climate analysis before creating your urban green spaces, before creating new ones. You have to understand where to put the urban green spaces, not only based on the climate need, which is related to the urban heat island intensity, but also, as Jerome presented, it's also related to accessibility to each citizen to an urban green space. So basically, it can not only be the climate data who decide how to adapt and where to create new urban green spaces, but I think it's mandatory data to manage green spaces in the city.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Ari, are there any sort of questions from the audience, or maybe you've got some questions to the panel?
Yes, we do have questions from the audience. I also came up with some of my own, because this really hits home for me, from my own academic background and other stuff. But I guess we can start with Roman, since there is a question from Gianluigi Renzi, and also we formulated a question together. But so how do you distinguish between different species of trees, and especially in these non-homogeneous areas where there are mixed tree species? So how do you distinguish those?
So yeah, basically for the urban simulations, so when we do several scenarios and we can kind of change the type of trees, the type of species that we use, we are able to integrate into the model, which is a urban climate world model. So basically how that works is that urban climate models allows to dissect all the interactions between the city and all its components. So basically the urban green spaces, the buildings, the roads, the parkings, and everything that composes the city and the atmosphere at a local scale. And so if we change all the species of trees that are currently existing, the local climate will change, because in the model, when we integrate different type of species, there will be different characteristics of thermal regulation, different characteristics of how to say sun, like mitigation of
Shading. Shading.
Yeah, shading. Yeah, that's what I was searching. Thank you, Alex. So shading, and so based on this regulation, thermal regulation and shading characteristics, we can assess if this type of tree or this type of tree is better for this given region. But that's not the only criteria that we are taking into account, because we are also taking into account the criteria that I was presented, and that were like carbon storage, pollution storage, interest for biodiversity. So this is not only about regulating temperature and regulating flood risks, but it's also about taking into account the characteristics for different sectors and fields.
Yeah, fascinating.
Right, yeah. Thank you. So you kind of answered my second question. So how do you differentiate the effects of different tree species? But so just to clarify, you don't use any sort of kind of a spectral sensing, for example, what Jerome was mentioning. How do they kind of differentiate different tree species from the kind of the different reflections? For example, if you need to differentiate, this is a birch and this is an oak, so how do you do that?
Well, so this is what we do when we integrate data into the model. So basically, we have a huge part of automated data integration, which doesn't go into this kind of details. But then when we take the details from the client, which is the one that thought the project, he can give us all the information he knows about the type of trees that he wants to put, the type of trees that are existing in a given area, and so we can integrate it in the model. And when we do it, so the model adapt the climate data in output of the model in order to see how this or that type of tree kind of acts with the climate.
Yeah. I guess maybe just to Ari. So basically, it's not that you can automatically recognize from space what trees are on the ground, but it's more that you need some ground assisted data to be able to tell you then how the mix of vegetation is, right?
Yeah, well, maybe we can, but that's not what we do. We are more into climate at a broader scale. When we do automated index like U6, which can be calculated anywhere in the world, we don't go into this kind of details. But when we do urban simulation, we can say if it's an oak or it's another type of tree, and then say if it has a higher value in terms of thermal regulation, for example.
Understood. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I don't know, Ari, you've got another question or anything else from the audience?
Yes. No,
Conscious of time as well, we've got maybe 4 minutes left.
Yes. So, well, I do have one question for Marion and one question for Jerome, but I guess we can start with Marion. So when you are doing this kind of like vegetation like measurements, can you open them up a little bit? Like what kind of measurements do you do? And like, for example, do you calculate the NDVI, the natural normalized difference vegetation index, or something else?
Yes, sure. So what we're doing is we are measuring the height and the cover of vegetation. For this, we have trained a model that is using Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 satellite data. So it's optical and radar data. And so it's using parameters such as NDVI, but it's not at all limited to NDVI. There's a lot of parameters that are taken into account and that we don't define. It's really machine learning, like it's a deep learning model. And so we've been producing that data actually not only in urban areas or along infrastructures. We now have canopy and forest maps for the entire world, and with 10-meter resolution. And we, in some places, in France, for example, where we have additional data sets, in France, we have high resolution LiDAR data. So we were able to bring our canopy cover threshold to 5-meter resolution. And that's what we are using. So it's really satellite data and measuring the height and the cover and the evolution over time.
All right, thank you. So I have one question for Jerome as well. So you mentioned that for satellite data, you are using these Sentinel-2 images and also sometimes buying commercial images from Airbus, for example. But do you use any sort of other types of data, such as like a location data, or do you use some like local sensors to collect more information on the environments that you monitor?
Yes, we use mainly satellite data, especially Sentinel-2 data, to classify the pixels, and we use also open data. As I showed, we use OpenStreetMap to drive the map of the streets when we want to compute the walking distance to the green spaces. Otherwise, we can also use other type of open data, not strictly related to green spaces. For instance, we have data about on river flows, for instance. So we use APIs to open data catalog to retrieve data. So we can benefit from different type of data. For instance, for temperature, we use also Landsat data, which is another satellite. So we use different types of data, either from Earth observation or other data that are provided through APIs and ground data such as OpenStreetMap.
Oh, Excellent. Yeah, I think Ari, we are sort of now hitting sort of the end of the session. I know that Alain wanted to say a few words as well about our upcoming open market consultation. I don't know, Alain, are you still around? You available to speak?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I
Brilliant.
share just a screen? Oh, sorry.
Okay. But obviously, I'd like at this stage still to say thank you to everyone. It was really like an insightful afternoon session. So yeah, I think we've learned a lot now about urban green space management and what satellite technologies can offer, the different angles it provides. So thanks a lot to all our three presenters for the presentations. And then please stay 1 minute with us. Alain has a few closing words about, and I think I alluded to it. Our project is running like an open market consultation for a tender we're launching next year. So maybe Alain, a few words here.
Thank you so much, Alex. Just a brief word about the OMC, which is meaning open market consultation. So I invite all suppliers that presented and suppliers that might be present to this presentation to come and engage in the various activities that we are conducting from June to November. So we are calling everyone, research centers, companies, but also associations, non-profit organizations, to give us their advice and their feedback on the specifications that we are working on, because the call for tenders will be launched in the first quarter of 2025. And it's going to be the only one published. So if you miss the first and only call for tender, there is no way to enter the PCP after that. So before we publish it, we are looking for solutions and your comments on the specifications that we might have in the call for tender. So there are various ways to engage. The first one is, you can see on the left, the top left is the survey, which allows you to tell us more about the market, about what is being done on urban challenges. And the second one is an interactive group on LinkedIn where you can ask questions about the cities, the challenges cities are having. You can also ask questions on the email address that you can see above. And the last way to engage is to participate in the 3 European webinars that are already planned throughout this autumn. And there are also national webinars are also planned in specific countries, but we will come back to that. So thank you, Alex, and yeah, we are all ears about your ideas.
Cool. No, thanks again for really staying with us until the very end. I know we started off with a few more participants, but obviously a lot of people have come back to work. But yeah, thanks as well for staying with us for the series. I mean, this is like the 4th and final edition of the SPACE4Cities webinar. We'll be back, I hope, soon as well with some other things, as you say, at the open market consultation and other things. But yeah, please stay tuned otherwise. And I wish you a lovely rest of the week. Okay, take care, everyone. See you.
Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thanks.